Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Evie and I am a sapphic romance reader, and what better time than Lesbian Visibility Week to do my very first long-form YouTube video of all of my favorite sapphic book recommendations. Today's video is going to be just that. These are going to be some of my favorite sapphic romance books that I've ever read, and honestly, I think it's not really super well known that I only really got into reading sapphic romance last year, or at the beginning of last year when I started my TikTok journey, and I've read so many amazing books since then. There are so many amazing sapphic romance books, and my personal favorites typically lean towards contemporary romance. I do love a little bit of fantasy, I do love a little bit of dark romance, but I feel like a traditional contemporary romance that is like a little bit small town, maybe enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, fake dating and stuff like that is literally my kryptonite. I absolutely worship books like that, and one of my absolute favorite books that I've read is Stealing Sunshine by Hannah Cowan. This is like one of the most outlandish surprise sapphic romance books that I've read in the last year that I really wasn't anticipating loving as much as I did, because it's in the middle of a straight romance series. I think she did 2 straight romance books, Stealing Sunshine, and then another 2 or something along those lines. And this really is one of my absolute favorite small town contemporary sapphic romances. This is set in the small town of Cherry Peak and follows Bryce and Daisy. Bryce is like a grumpy tattoo artist. She owns her own studio, and Daisy has just come back to town to be a school teacher. And they very much have this kind of have known each other since childhood, and then have like reconvened, have the same friend group. Daisy's brother is also part of that friend group, and his book is one of the earlier ones in the series, and it's so incredibly well written. And no, so many people ask me all the time, you do not need to read the other books to enjoy this one. If you want to, I would highly recommend it. It's still a very good series, but you can definitely read Stealing Sunshine without reading the rest of the books in the Cherry Peak like series. This also has very much the black cat golden retriever that I feel like so many people love in books and relationships these days, and highlighting in that this is a fake dating story and also forced proximity. I feel like there are so many amazing tropes that go into this book, but they eventually end up having to live together because as Daisy comes back to town, she doesn't have anywhere to go. So then one thing leads to another, and slowly as they start fake dating to kind of curb the pressure of Bryce's parents and such like that, they eventually fall in love, which I feel like is not a spoiler at all, but it is honestly one of my absolute favorite books that I would really highly recommend. Now, if you've seen me on TikTok, this is not going to be a surprise recommendation to you. It's going to be the Bloomtown duology by Ali North. I rave about this duology all the time, and for a very good reason. This is one of the most remarkable sapphic historical romances I've ever read in my entire life, and honestly made me love reading duologies that much more, because I really wasn't a huge fan of them before. I thought they were too short, but I loved an interconnected standalone series, but this duology really sold it for me. This is set in 1852 and tells the story of Abby and Joey. Abby is a preacher's daughter and Joey is an outlawed criminal. When I say this is one of the most amazing, slow burn, intense, compassionate love stories I've ever read in my entire life, it also has one of the most amazing found families that I've ever read about. I always appreciated found family, but I really didn't love it until I read this book and experienced that storyline between them all. It is really just one of the most remarkable books I could ever recommend in my entire life. Next is an author that I've been recommending from day one, and that is Ruby Rowe, and the first book I read of hers is A Game of Hearts and Heists. I read this at the beginning of 2025 and it stays with me because the Girl Games trilogy is such an amazing series. This is very much fantasy meets spicy meets romance. It just has everything you could want and more in a sapphic romance series. And I think especially, as I said, I'm primarily a contemporary romance reader. I don't always gravitate towards super heavy fantasy or anything like that. For me personally, I found this to be such a good blend in between because it doesn't really go into any kind of historical fantasy or anything like that. It very much reads modern and contemporary and current whilst being in a fantasy world. This tells the story of Scarlet Grey, who is a disgraced assassin, and Quinn Adams, who is a medic turned poisoner. And oh my god, the enemies to lovers in this book. I don't know what Ruby Rowe puts in her books, but this it got me hooked so quickly. There is definitely elements of political intrigue in this as well, which I feel like is always a favorite thing in fantasy novels, and just has so much like character-driven storyline that I personally love. So if you are looking for something that is fantasy, character-driven, enemies to lovers galore, and spice galore as well, Ruby Rowe is your woman, and I would highly recommend starting with A Game of Hearts and Heists because that's the one I started with. My next recommendation, we are throwing it back to an OG, to a classic in the sapphic romance world. This is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is the story of Claire and Delilah. Delilah is a black cat photographer from New York City. Claire is a small town single mum, and oh my god, this is a classic for a reason. I feel like this is the first book so many people pick up when they're looking to start their sapphic romance reading journey, and there is a really good reason for it. I remember the first time I read it, it was one of the first sapphic romance books I ever read, and I absolutely loved it so much. This like flicked a switch in my brain, going from reading traditional straight romance into discovering the world of sapphic romance. I feel like so many of people have spoken about this. It's very much small town, contemporary romance. There's such an amazing friend group in this because it is part of a trilogy, and I think if you want something easy and simple to start with initially, if you're looking to go into romance, this is going to be the book for you. I've done a little bit of contemporary romance, we've done a little bit of fantasy. Let me pull out a recommendation for my dark romance girls. If you know me, this isn't going to be a surprise. You will associate me with this book, and it is Collateral Damage by Shassii. I have spoken about this book more times than I can count in the past year. Oh my god, I loved it so much. It will absolutely rip out your soul, but the romance in this book is so amazing. I know so many people have listened to me speak about it and have been like shock value, oh my god, it must be crazy, but this is one of the most emotionally drawn out slow burn books I've ever read. If you're looking for a traditional dark romance, I wouldn't necessarily say this is going to be that, but I do think you'll be really, really satisfied by the book because it has darker elements to it. I wouldn't even necessarily say the romance itself is super dark all the time because I don't think it was. It ended up being incredibly sweet and heartfelt, but the issues that this book deals with are so deep and so intense, and they have been written about so beautifully. Hayden and Alora have such amazing, intense chemistry and connection together. This book, like, the spice in this book, yes, it is amazing. It is like so juicy and toe curling. I absolutely loved it, but oh my gosh, just like, for a book that is set primarily in one place most of the time, the world building was just absolutely incredible. I really will never stop raving about this book because I loved it so much. And I do typically say, for my dark romance readers, you are going to love it, and believe me, you will. But if you're not typically a dark romance reader, I still highly recommend you give this book a chance because it really is remarkable, and it really will make you think so much about the way we treat others and the justice system and everything else we experience in life. It really goes into heavy topics of love and loss and how we deal with things in the aftermath of life and the processes that we go through. So Shassii, this was one of my favorite reads of last year, and I highly, highly recommend. And finally, a contemporary romance that I only just discovered recently this year is the Sap in the City series by Chelsea M. Cameron. I've only read this book in the last month. This is Unexpected You, and when I say this is the greenest of green flag romance books I've ever read in my entire life, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. These are actually really short little books, but oh my god, I'm so happy flying through them because this is around an 8-book series. Stace and Hunter are our 2 main characters in this. Stace is a firefighter, and Hunter, who we were introduced to in the first book, is an influencer meets yoga instructor meets real estate agent and many other things in life. And the way these 2 characters care about one another and the time they took to establish their relationship was so enjoyable to read about. It very much didn't jump into anything immediately. They took the whole book to really work through these characters getting together and establishing and developing this relationship, which I absolutely loved to see so incredibly much. I think especially it goes into the idea of avoidant attachment, which I think is a really interesting thing that not enough people really address in books, despite many characters seeming to have it. But this was so good. Hunter very much exhibited some avoidant attachment in this, and it was really heartwarming to see Stace as a character help her and hold her hand and work her way through that as they were discovering their relationship together. But if you were looking for a short contemporary romance to read, this is one I would highly recommend. It's the 2nd book in the Sapphik in the City series. I would recommend starting with the 1st, but you do not have to, but it was such an enjoyable one. And they are all of the books I have to recommend for my very first video for you guys. If you are here, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you like and subscribe to my channel and my videos, it would mean so much to me. I would really appreciate it, and I have a lot planned that I'm really excited to do with this channel. It is very much an extension of my TikTok, if you've seen any of my videos there, or even over on Instagram. I just have so much love to give for Sapphic books and our community, and I can't wait to share more with you guys.